During NASA's November 19th live stream about the interstellar visitor 3I Atlas, something felt strangely heavy, almost as if the silence behind their words mattered more than the explanations themselves. They spoke for a long time, listing missions, instruments, timelines, yet revealed almost no new details. The images shown were distant and dim, and much of the data was described as still being processed or not yet downlinked. They repeated several times that 3I Atlas is simply a comet, insisting on it with a care that seemed deliberate, almost rehearsed. And when the stream finally ended, what lingered was the sense that most of what truly matters remained off-screen. When an object comes from beyond the solar system, you expect clarity, not this soft drift around the essential details. Sometimes the silence surrounding a discovery becomes part of the mystery itself. The NASA livestream on November 19th promised clarity, but as it unfolded, it became clear that the structure of the briefing was designed less to inform and more to guide the public toward a single, controlled conclusion. Before presenting any new data, the panel focused on denying rumors, emphasizing repeatedly that 3I Atlas is only a comet, as if the greatest priority of the event were shaping perception rather than sharing discoveries. They moved through rehearsed explanations, revisiting the same safe points. Comets behave like this, comets release dust like that, comets come and go. What felt unusual was how little they expanded on anything beyond that. 20 spacecraft had eyes on 3I Atlas at different moments, across multiple wavelengths. Yet the live stream offered only a handful of faint images, most of them distant and lacking detail. They mentioned Hubble, James Webb, Lucy, Psyche, Maven, MRO, and more. But every reference came wrapped in disclaimers. Instruments pushed to their limits, angles not ideal, calibration still needed, data not ready for release. It was a long list of reasons not to show what everyone expected to see. And through all this, the tone never shifted. The speakers kept a steady calm, careful not to imply anything unexpected. Even when they described the object's unusual chemical ratios or hinted that its origin might predate the formation of our sun, they moved quickly past those details, almost as if lingering on them would risk raising questions they didn't want to answer on camera. The live stream felt less like a scientific update and more like a subtle reassurance campaign meant to close the conversation before it truly began. By the end, the message was clear. 3I Atlas is ordinary. The situation is under control, and whatever data hasn't been shown will come later. Yet no timeline was given and no raw imagery was presented. The result was a briefing filled with words but empty of revelation, a carefully managed moment that left viewers with a sense that the real answers, whatever they may be, were left somewhere just outside the frame. What stood out most in the live stream wasn't the information NASA revealed, but the information they carefully stepped around. Again and again, they reminded the audience that much of the data on 3I Atlas still hadn't been downlinked, processed, or calibrated. It became a kind of refrain, a soft barrier placed between the public and the raw material collected by nearly 20 missions scattered across the solar system. For an event meant to update the world on a visitor from beyond our sun, the actual content shown was remarkably thin. NASA described a long list of instruments observing 3I Atlas, Hubble capturing its faint coma, Webb detecting molecular signatures, Maven tracing hydrogen emission, Lucy and Psyche imaging from distant vantage points. And yet, the live stream offered almost none of these images. Viewers saw a few cropped frames, a blurry haze here, a faint streak there, nothing that matched the scale of what NASA claimed to have gathered. They spoke about science wiggles, complex spectrographs, and high-resolution stacks, but kept the visual evidence off-screen. It felt like watching a weather report with no satellite images, only descriptions of what the satellites supposedly saw. Even more curious were the details they mentioned quickly, almost too quickly. The unusually high carbon dioxide ratio, the excess nickel compared to iron, the unexpected polarization of the dust, the possibility that the comet's home system might be older than the sun itself. Each of these signals suggests something distinctive about the history of 3I Atlas, something that deserves slow, deliberate explanation. But instead they hovered there for a moment and vanished as the conversation drifted back to safer ground. Then came the comments about pushing instruments beyond their intended limits, as if preparing the audience for imperfections they didn't want to display publicly. They explained that some spacecraft had to turn into awkward positions to glimpse the object, which introduced glare and artifacts. They acknowledged that some data could be misleading without proper calibration, implying that releasing it early could cause confusion. And while all of these reasons sound responsible on the surface, together they formed a strange pattern, NASA repeatedly emphasizing why they couldn't show the data rather than why they should. It wasn't that they claimed the data didn't exist, it was the opposite. They made it clear that a vast amount of information had been collected across different wavelengths, distances, and instruments. But the live stream delivered only fragments, carefully selected and safely uncontroversial. The audience was reminded again and again to be patient, to wait for analysis, to trust the process. And while patience is a virtue, the selective visibility created an unsettling contrast. NASA insisted that nothing unusual was happening, yet their reluctance to share the full picture made the emptiness feel heavier, as if the silence itself were protecting something the public wasn't meant to see just yet. As the livestream moved toward its final minutes, the most striking element wasn't a revelation, a discovery, or a new image. It was the pattern of silence that shaped every answer. Whenever someone asked about unusual behavior, unexpected signals, or the true significance of an object arriving from beyond the solar system, the responses softened, the pace slowed, and the explanations dissolved into layers of caution. NASA emphasized that 3I Atlas behaves like a comet, yet the very anomalies they rushed past hinted at a story far older and more complex than the one they were willing to explore on camera. They spoke about its possible origin in a star system older than the Sun, but without lingering on what that truly implies. They mentioned strange chemical ratios and dust properties rarely seen in local comets, yet shifted quickly back to familiar comparisons. They acknowledged subtle, non-gravitational forces acting on the object, but framed them as routine, even though such forces are rarely identical from one comet to another. Each detail surfaced for a moment like a faint signal in static, and then slipped back into the comfortable narrative that nothing here should surprise us. What made the silence more noticeable was the contrast between what was asked and what was answered. Questions about the comet's shape, its composition, its origin, and the gaps in the data were met with phrases like too early to know, uncertain, or still being analyzed. It's natural for science to take time, but the hesitation felt less like the pace of research and more like the careful management of public expectation, as if the safest path was to keep everything in a narrow frame until they could control the entire picture. There's a long history of agencies trying to avoid public confusion by withholding preliminary data, and maybe that's all this is. But when something arrives from interstellar space, something untouched by our sun, something carrying the chemical fingerprint of a place we've never seen, the instinct to compress it into the category of ordinary comet feels strangely protective. Perhaps they fear speculation. Perhaps they fear misinterpretation. Or perhaps the real fear is that the first interstellar visitor in years has brought signals that don't fit cleanly into the models we're used to. In the end, the livestream revealed very little, not because nothing was found, but because the most interesting pieces were left hovering between lines. Silence often suggests discomfort, and discomfort suggests that the story is still shifting beneath the surface. Whatever 3I Atlas is, ordinary or not, it has already forced NASA to speak more carefully than usual, holding back the very data that might answer the questions their audience hasn't stopped asking. And when silence shows up this consistently, it becomes part of the mystery, a quiet shadow stretching just beyond the edge of what we're allowed to see. When NASA's November 19th stream finally ended, what lingered wasn't what they showed, but everything left unspoken. The update on 3I Atlas came wrapped in calm explanations and promises of data later. Yet the most intriguing details, its strange chemistry, its possible ancient origin, its unusual behavior, were passed over quickly, almost cautiously. The silence around it felt heavier than the information itself. Maybe they're still trying to understand what they captured. Maybe they're avoiding speculation or simply waiting until the data fits a clean narrative. But when something drifts in from beyond the solar system, older than our sun, silence becomes part of the mystery. It hints that the full picture sits just beyond view, held back by uncertainty or by intention. As 3i Atlas moves away, the questions it raised remain. And if you sense the same tension between what was said and what wasn't, stay close. This channel exists for those quiet gaps where official stories thin out and the darkness feels a little more honest. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring these hidden edges, and leave a like so the message reaches others listening for the silence behind the answers.